So imagine if your organization was really clear on each of those areas that it had to look at and had to prioritize. What would that mean in terms of the effort that people were putting in, the things that people weren't doing, and the effort that people were focusing on one place instead of another? Hi, and welcome to Helping You Perform. I'm your host, Paul Teasdale. Over a career working with high-performing teams from across the globe, including 7 years working with Formula One team McLaren, I've learned a lot about what it takes to drive results. In this weekly podcast series, I'm going to be bringing you tips, tricks and insights from the world of Formula One that you can apply for your organisation for your own high performance. Enjoy. Hi, and welcome to episode 5 of the Helping You Perform podcast, where I'm bringing these tips, tricks and insights from the world of Formula One to help you apply to your organisation for your own performance. In episode 4, we covered the R of the Rapid Performance Framework, R for results. And we started talking about why it's critical to understand the what and the how of your results. If you haven't listened to it, go back to that because it gives you a nice starting point for today's session, which is A for action. Now, when clients talk to me, there's generally two areas when it comes to action that aren't particularly clear for them. One might be, what are those things at my disposal? What can I do to influence the results that I'm trying to drive? The second one is, we know all of the things that are out there, or we know a lot of them that are out there, we just don't know what to prioritize. Now, this is where having this results hierarchy picture for your organization can really start to come into play. Because what you can start to do is break down what are those different areas where you can take action to have impact on those areas. Now, we use the Formula One example where we said about, if championship points was the top level result that you're trying to drive, you might be looking at things like straight line speed, cornering ability, you might be looking at human performance. Now, when you start to break that down, you can say, right, how do I impact straight line speed? Now, that might be about power, but also equally important, it might be about grip. If you haven't got grip, you can't put that power onto the track. And you also need to take into account aerodynamics. If you can cut through the air and those straight lines, then all the better. You can actually get that speed. Now, when it comes to cornering, power and grip are also really important, but actually downforce becomes really important. So what you're trying to do is maximize downforce, whereas in a straight line, you're trying to minimize downforce and cut through that air nicely. So you can already start to see that the actions that certain areas of the business or certain design decisions for certain aspects of this result hierarchy can have impact on different areas of the organization and have an impact on the overall result that you're trying to drive. Now, just to complete this, you might be talking about human performance. You can start to break that down into things like wellness, sleep, nutrition, exercise. So these are all starting to get things. These are things that I can do something about that have an impact to maximize my human performance. Now, these are great, and you can maximize each of those areas. You can maximize the straight line speed. You can try to maximize the cornering speed. But actually, a race, like any organization, doesn't just isn't compromised of just the one element. There's multiple bits, and they're conflicting in various areas. So you're going to need to make suboptimal decisions for the circumstance that you're in. So for instance, you might want to make suboptimal straight line speed decisions for better cornering ability in a certain track that you go into, or for a certain design of car that you've got. So you can start to look at this for an organization outside the world of Formula One, where you might be looking at, for example, recruitment and selection. Now, within recruitment and selection, I mentioned that hierarchy where you start with, I want high performance. And I want that to break down into being effective and to being efficient. So what does it mean to be effective in that space? Well, as the hierarchy builds out, you can start to say, right, well, first of all, it needs to drive the results that we want. Well, we need to get people through the door. It's got to be good at getting people in the door and recruited. But it's also got to be done in a way that's within the regulations, all the employment laws that you've got, all the internal policies that you have. And it's also got to be safe. So you might want to include things like around safeguarding. That might be important for your organization. So again, you can start to see that these are things that you can break down to that next level and that next level again, where you really start to understand what are the things that impact each of those areas. Now, when it comes to efficiency in that world, you might be looking at, how do I get things right first time? So a great way of getting efficiency is to stop waste in the first place. So how do I get things right first time? Secondly, it might be about when things go wrong, how do I react to that in the most appropriate way and the quickest way? So if I've got a recruitment problem, how do I get conflict resolution or resolution of any sort of support request? How do I get that happening in a really quick way? Now, all of these things will lead to a high-performing recruitment and selection process. And you can start to break down those actions for each of those areas and start to give your organization a guide as to these are the areas we want you to prioritize. Now, what your role as you go higher up in the organization is to start to say, right, what has a bigger impact on my results? Is it things like around the regulations? Is it things about the efficiency of the processes that are there? Is it things about how effective we are of actually getting people through the door? And what's most important to you right now might be different to what's important to you later on as well. So you can start to prioritize the resources and the actions and the priorities that your individual teams have, so that they know what to do when, so that they can impact the results that you want to drive as an organization. So imagine if your organization was really clear on each of those areas that it had to look at and had to prioritize. What would that mean in terms of the effort that people were putting in, the things that people weren't doing, and the effort that people were focusing on one place instead of another? And what would it mean in terms of the clarity to your people, so that they knew what was happening, they knew how they were demonstrating value in your organization, such that the impact that they had an impact on the overall organization's performance? So I want you to have a look at starting to think about your own results hierarchy. Start to build that out for yourself. What does it mean in your world to be effective? What does it mean to be efficient? And if you want some free resources around this, some further examples and things like that, some templates, then reach out to me through the paulteasdale.co.uk website, and I'll be happy to share with you some examples and some templates from there. So action is all about understanding where your results are impacted. What are those levers that you have in your organization to push and pull such that you can drive the performance you want to drive? In the next episode, we're going to be looking at P for people. Now, it's a huge topic in its own right, and I'm just going to touch on a few things within that people space. But we might include things like, how do you make sure you get the right people through the door? How do you know what the capabilities are that those people are there? How do you make sure they're managed and motivated? Loads of questions around people and loads of lessons to be learned from the world of Formula One that you can apply for your organization as well. So listen out for next week's episode. In the meantime, as always, contact me through the paulteasdale.co.uk website. You'll find a link there and a link in the show notes as well to set up a free, no obligations, 30-minute chat with me, where you can start to build out this thought process for yourself and understand, how does this rapid framework fit into your organization, and how can we accelerate the results for you? See you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Helping You Perform podcast. If you found value in this episode, please take a moment to like, share, or review the podcast. You can reach out to me at any time, either through LinkedIn or through my website at www.paulteasdale.co.uk. I look forward to speaking to you in the next episode.